It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The head of the RAF is ready to test the limit of the law to improve diversity in the force. The revelation is made in leaked transcripts and the latest in a series of Sky News investigations on RAF recruitment claims.
If someone's broken the law, then of course they will face the consequences for that.
Also tonight, the King says he will support a study into the British monarchy's historic links to slavery. Welcomed diplomacy. The French president tells China to bring Russia to its senses and come back to the negotiating table with Ukraine. Back in Paris, one of the French president's favourite restaurants was set on fire as tens of thousands of protesters take to the streets. The emergency alert to warn the public of dangerous situations to be tested later this month. And the Lionesses' penalty shootout win at the first women's Finalissima in front of a crowd of more than 80,000 at Wembley. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. A very good evening. The head of the Royal Air Force has signalled he would bend his service out of shape and test the limit of the law to improve diversity. That's according to a leaked transcript of an internal meeting. It's the latest in a series of Sky News investigations on RAF recruitment claims, which led to MPs questioning Air Chief Marshal Sir Mike Wigston, who has always maintained that necessary and well-intentioned efforts to increase the ratio of ethnic minority and female recruits had no impact on the RAF's operational effectiveness. But now, a serving RAF airman has told Sky News that the service is struggling due to a lack of recruitment. Our Security and Defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has this exclusive report.
Better diversity has been a key goal for the Royal Air Force under its outgoing chief. A well-intentioned aim, but with unintended consequences, after the head of recruitment quit last year in protest at an allegedly illegal order to discriminate against white men. It's a controversy still hanging over the RAF, headquartered here at High Wycombe. With Air Chief Marshal Sir Mike Wigston preparing to leave office soon, Sky News can reveal new details about conversations on diversity that allegedly took place behind the scenes. I've been told by a source that in June 2022, the Air Force's top personnel officer, in correspondence to staff, said Air Chief Marshal Wigston was prepared to bend what's known as the operational inflow requirement for the RAF out of shape over the next 3 years to meet levels of ambition when it came to diversity. The Air Chief has always insisted his important drive for more women and ethnic minorities was never at the expense of the service's warfighting needs.
There was no compromise of entry standards. There was no impact on the standard of recruits from any background. There was no impact on the front line or on operational effectiveness.
An airman sharing his views anonymously offered a different perspective. He said, us on the shop floor, so to speak, are struggling. We haven't got enough people to do the jobs and are desperate to have new recruits, new people constantly. Sky News has seen a leaked transcript from a meeting in June 2020 between the head of the RAF and the Air Force's Black, Asian and minority ethnic network. It gave a sense of Air Chief Marshal Wigston's understandable passion about lifting the ratio of ethnic minority recruits in the service from around 6% to 20% by 2030. If change didn't happen fast enough, he said, I'm going to take it as far as I can in the law, right up to the point of quotas, and push positive action to the limit of the law. 2 years later, this woman, Group Captain Elizabeth Nichol resigned as head of recruitment after refusing to implement what she allegedly deemed to be an illegal order to prioritise female and ethnic minority recruits over white men for training slots. An inquiry into what happened has yet to be published, but the Defence Secretary said anyone to be found at fault would be held to account.
And if someone's broken the law, then of course they will face the consequences for that. Ultimately, what people need to understand is that no one was prevented from joining the RAF as a result of these conditions.
An RAF spokesperson said, "During the period in question, our selection standards did not drop and there was no impact on the operational effectiveness of the RAF. However, in hindsight, we accept that despite the best of intentions, that some mistakes were made." The RAF's now confident its approach to recruitment is correct, but that's slim comfort for those already impacted. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Isn't it responding to radio?
The King is backing a study exploring the relationship between the British monarchy and slavery in the 17th and 18th centuries. In a statement released this morning, the palace said that King Charles takes the issue extremely seriously. It was in response to this document that emerged in the Guardian newspaper showing King William III's stake in a slave trading company worth £1,000. The shares were transferred from the slave trader Edward Coulston, a figure made more famous when his statue was toppled and thrown into Bristol Harbour in 2020. It's not the only historic connection between the monarchy and the slave trade. Back in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, the monarch gave a royal ship to slave trader John Hawkins in exchange for a share of the profits of his voyage. More than 400 African people were captured and sold into slavery as a result. Then in the 18th century, King George II was the governor of the South Sea Company, which took 41,923 African captives on its ships between 1714 and 1740. More than 7,000 people died on those voyages. While speaking about the legacy of those links, King Charles has said, "I cannot describe the depths of my personal sorrow at the suffering of so many as I continue to deepen my own understanding of slavery's enduring impact." Well, it was an issue that followed the King and Queen consort to York today as they attended the Maunday Thursday service. Along with cheers from the well-wishers, anti-monarchy protesters turned out chanting, "Not my king." Sky's North of England correspondent Shingi Marurike reports.
King arriving in York for a centuries-old tradition, the Royal Maundy service. Dating back to 1210, it sees the monarch handing out specially minted coins to those who have served their churches and communities. But today, King Charles also acknowledged a darker chapter in his family's past, pledging his support for a study into their links to slavery for the first time. In the face of regular protest, not seen by his mother, the late Queen, his attempts to be a progressive king will see the institution he represents questioned now more than ever.
Promising to look into the royal family's ties to the slave trade is a matter the King says he takes profoundly seriously, with research expected to end in 2026. But the protesters here feel those answers need to be more urgent.
Well, I don't think they've really been very explicit about it. I think that they will always fudge it. They've not really acknowledged their own personal legacy. And it's difficult. People might say, look, Charles isn't responsible for, George III, but he takes his position as king because of George III. So you can't have it both ways.
That colonial legacy is why some nations are looking to lose the king as their head of state.
I think that it would make a great deal of difference to many people in the British Commonwealth, particularly in the Caribbean, if the royal family acknowledged not only that they were representative of a nation involved in slavery, but they had personal links as well.
With a month until the coronation, those complex, contentious debates around issues like this will continue. Here in York, opinion was divided.
To say he's not our king, well he is, he's all of our kings, isn't he, whether they like it or not. You know, they live in a country where they're allowed to do that.
They're entitled to their opinions, but they're so voluble and so angry about it, it seems unnecessary, really.
It's clear that as the monarchy moves into a new era, one of the main questions for now and the future is how it deals with the issues of the past. Shingi Barike, Sky News, York.
The Chinese leader has been urged by Europe to bring Russia to its senses. French President Emmanuel Macron and the European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen have been in Beijing for diplomatic talks. Xi Jinping was warned that supplying weapons to Moscow would have significant consequences. Sky's Asia correspondent Helen Smith reports.
There's been a parade of leaders through Beijing in recent weeks, but few have been met with a welcome like this. China rolled out the red carpet for President Macron, both literally and metaphorically. But for all the show, there's still more than just a language barrier between these two leaders.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
At the negotiating table, there was much to discuss: a war in Ukraine and China's position on it.
L'agression russe en Ukraine a porté un coup.
The Russian aggression in Ukraine has dealt a blow to this stability and put an end to decades of peace in Europe. And I know that I can count on you to bring Russia to reason and everyone to the negotiating table.
China claims it's neutral in the war, but these scenes in Moscow last month indicate otherwise. Even here, aside Macron, Xi made it clear Russia's interests shouldn't be forgotten.
Take into account the legitimate security concerns of all parties, seek political resolutions, and build a balanced, effective and sustainable European security framework.
This mission clearly matters. The EU Commission boss is here too to push it. The real fear is what happens if China goes further and sells arms to Russia.
Arming the aggressor is a clear violation of international law. It's the aggressor, and he should never be armed. And this would indeed significantly harm the relationship between the European Union and China.
A threat made more stinging by being delivered on Chinese soil. But will it land? A relationship with Europe has value for China, not just economically, but also as a buffer against its plummeting relations with America. But it also has lots of reasons why it doesn't want to see Russia weakened and defeated. It's therefore very possible that visits like this won't make much difference. Indeed, China's #1 goal is to protect the interests of China. For now, its careful balancing act is most likely to remain. Helen Smith, Sky News in Beijing.
Rishi Sunak has said that no further action will be taken against former Tory Chief Whip Mark Spencer after an inquiry failed to determine whether he had told a Conservative MP her Muslim faith was a factor in her sacking. Nusrat Ghani claimed she was told her Muslimness was raised as an issue when she lost her job as a minister in 2020. Well, Sky's political correspondent Ali Fortescue joins me now from Westminster. Ali, this was a 3-year investigation. What happened?
Well, Sally, let's go back to the beginning. Nus Ghani was the first ever female Conservative Muslim MP to be elected in the House of Commons. She was sacked in 2020. She was a transport minister. She says at the time, Mark Spencer, the then chief whip, said part of the reason for that was, as she put it, her Muslimness was raised as an issue that was making people feel uncomfortable. Well, there was a long-awaited Cabinet Office review. Today, that review has effectively said that this is a he said, she said situation. There is not enough evidence. I'll read you part of the report. Despite a review of considerable evidence, it has not been possible to draw a clear picture of what was discussed. Ms. Ghani and Mr. Spencer have differing accounts of these meetings with different recollections of what was said. So Mark Spencer has effectively been cleared of any wrongdoing. He has, though, been criticised for the way that this meeting was handled, the fact that it happened in private. Nuz Ghani today standing by her allegations. The Prime Minister, though, I think very keen to draw a line under this. He says no further actions going to be taken. But this is an interesting, I think, example of a report that is slightly more nuanced, slightly less clear-cut, certainly if you compare it to Nadeem Zahawi, who was very quickly sacked. And of course, coming down the tracks, remember, is the investigation into Dominic Raab. We expect that to come back soon. That may well end up being a very difficult decision for Rishi Sunak.
Very much. The new leader of the SNP and Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has told Sky News that governance of the party is not as good as it should be. It comes after the police finally finished searching the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband Peter Murrell over SNP finances. Mr. Murrell was arrested yesterday and later released without charge as part of the investigation. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis reports.
Detectives departing after more than 30 hours. Time spent scouring the home of ex-SNP chief Peter Murrell, the husband of Nicola Sturgeon. Evidence gathering in a place police are focused on as part of an investigation on SNP funding and finances. A probe that led to the arrest and later release of Murrell.
Well, in Scots law, you can be arrested and not charged, but only held for a maximum of 12 hours. The purpose of that 12 hours is really to gather information about potential crimes. The pending investigation means they are going to look through all that material.
Entering the home of the new leader of Scotland, the official residence of Humza Yousaf, someone now attempting to reset after the departure of the country's political power couple.
You touched on governance and transparency within the party that you're now leading. Is that an admission that things were not quite right over the course of the last couple of years under Peter Murrell's watch?
It's an admission that our governance, our transparency should have been better.
Was Nicola Sturgeon too dominant, in your view?
I think in her own view, in her own words, she was a dominant political force. There's now an opportunity with her no longer the leader of the party, with Peter no longer the chief executive, to have a different way of doing things.
This has been a long-running probe stretching back to March 2021, when a complaint was lodged with police about £600,000 raised to support a second independence referendum. That May, the SNP National Treasurer resigned, citing financial transparency concerns. By July, detectives launched Operation Branchform amid 7 complaints. Fast forward to December 2022, Accounts Commission reports say Peter Murrell provided a personal loan of more than £100,000 to the SNP around 18 months before. By March, after decades at the top, he quit after a row over dwindling membership numbers. This saga will no doubt be weighing heavy on Nicola Sturgeon, who has not been seen in public. She was due to appear here at this venue in Edinburgh to discuss climate change, but pulled out, a sign that the crisis in her personal life was at risk of overshadowing proceedings. As the police presence moves away, the job of sifting and scrutinising any evidence begins. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
While President Macron remains in China, protesters have again taken to the streets of Paris over his plans to raise the retirement age. They set fire to a restaurant in the city known to be one of Mr. Macron's favourite places to eat. Our correspondent Adele Robinson reports.
Anger engulfing the streets of Paris once again, with an attack on a famous and favourite brasserie of the French president. Amid clashes between protesters and police, on the 11th day of nationwide strikes over pension reform plans to raise the retirement age to 64. This is a regular snapshot of discontent pervading much of France. After talks between unions and the French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne broke down.
They live in a parallel reality. It's incredible. They have to stop thinking that they can rewrite history and change reality. What happened is that yesterday's meeting was a slap in the face for the government. We slammed the door because Elisabeth Borne refused to withdraw the reform. We told her from one voice that if this reform was not withdrawn, we could not talk about anything else.
Macron's argument the country can't afford the current pension system is rejected en masse, with continuing fury over a decision to force reform through without a vote.
We won't give up until they take the time to listen, until they reconsider their decision. We won't give up.
The Constitutional Court will rule on the legality of legislation next week. Until then, a fierce dissent promises to rage on. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
The UK's steel industry has been in decline for years. Not just a job, but a way of life, already lost for many former workers. Unions have warned that without immediate action from the government, steel companies may never be able to recover. Now, many are calling for more investment to revive the sector. Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, reports.
Alan is one of a long line of steel workers in Port Talbot. His father and his father's father worked here, turning rock into iron and then into steel. Now, with the fate of the plant uncertain, he's worried that this is the end of an era.
My grandfather worked in the coke ovens, my father worked on the blast furnace, and my boy works in the coal mill there now. The town has shrunk, you know, you look at Station Road, the shops and that, it's not what it used to be. But we'd like to hang on to what we got there. And the fear is that if anything happened to the steel industry, it's going to drive youngsters out of Port Talbot.
Steel is the backbone for the modern world. If it's not made of steel, it's made with steel. But refining it from iron ore, as they do here in South Wales, is a dirty business.
That firework effect you can see behind me, each of those is tiny little pieces of molten iron coming out from the base of this blast furnace. Inside there, temperatures over 2,000 degrees. That's what you need to turn solid rock into molten liquid iron that's pouring out from the base of here. But the striking thing about this is, actually, iron is kind of the side product here. For every ton of steel produced here, there are 2 tons of carbon.
Tata, the Indian company which now runs the site, says its best hope of survival is to pull down the 2 massive blast furnaces and replace them with greener electric arc furnaces. But it won't come cheap, and it wants government help.
We are asking for a support, we are asking for investment. At this point of time, governments in Europe are pouring billions of money into our competitors' industry. In Germany, in France, in Spain, and we are only asking for a similar deal. So we want to have fairness, a fair deal for our communities, for our people.
The government has offered £300 million. Tata wants £1 billion or more. But even this won't save all the jobs, with only around 1,000 of the 4,000 likely to survive. That's not the only challenge facing the industry. In Rotherham, they already make steel the way they want to in South Wales, but Britain's high energy costs make it hard to compete.
At the end of the day, I think we're still about 30% above what the continent is. They are trying to close that gap, to make us at least competitive with the continent. And I think we'll get there. Is it soon enough? Probably not.
Elsewhere, steelworks are closing or cutting their workforce. No other country in the world, save for Venezuela, has seen steel production fall as fast as Britain. This country could become the first developed economy to shift completely to low-carbon steel production. But even this won't save all the jobs. For the workers here, another year of uncertainty looms. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Hospital leaders in England say they're seriously concerned about how patient safety will be maintained during next week's junior doctors' strikes. Members of the British Medical Association will walk out for 4 days from Tuesday. NHS officials are warning the strikes will have a severe impact on services. A man who murdered his pregnant wife by pushing her off a landmark in Edinburgh has been jailed for at least 20 years. Fawzia Javed died when she was pushed off Arthur's Seat in 2021. Police in Leeds described the actions of Kashif Anwar, who was 29, as incomprehensible. Doctors treating Italy's former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi have confirmed he's suffering from a lung infection brought on by leukemia. The 86-year-old is in intensive care at a hospital in Milan after suffering breathing problems. It's understood he's responded well to treatment following his admission yesterday. A new nationwide emergency alarm system is to be tested for the first time on Sunday, the 23rd of April. The tone will play across millions of phones in the UK and will be used to warn people in life-threatening emergencies. Ashna Hurinag has the details.
It's hardly a reassuring sound, but it is designed to get our attention. A 10-second alert that will be sent to every mobile phone across the country in a life-threatening emergency that the government is trialling.
There will be many people that see this as part of a slightly alarmist process of us worrying about a coming war, perhaps. I think that's a red herring, actually. Other things like flooding events, theoretically, in certain places at certain times, this could be useful, could save lives.
Particularly if things get this bad, its primary use will be for serious weather-related incidents.
It does flood here quite a lot and things, so yeah, it'd be quite a good idea.
I can see the benefits of it, definitely, in terms of like making everybody aware of the same thing at the same time.
This technology is so specific, it has the ability to target local people. The river behind me is prone to flooding. If it did, local people could be notified and told perhaps to evacuate their homes. But this system also has the ability to inform us of national incidents too. Security, weather or otherwise. It could, for instance, have been used last summer when some 20 homes were destroyed in wildfires that ripped through the village of Wennington in East London. The system is already used internationally, but only when there's an immediate risk to life.
I think this just helps us to be better prepared to deal with those circumstances. And in those circumstances, it could be the sound that saves your life.
But domestic abuse charities warn for some it could do the opposite.
I'm not sure that it's been fully appreciated just quite how dangerous the discovery of a hidden phone can be for women, and we need to do absolutely everything we can to make sure that everyone is aware that this is happening and how to turn it off.
The notification can be turned off on all devices and it doesn't tap into data. The government says the alert on the 23rd of April is just a test. If heard after then, it shouldn't be ignored. Ashna Hurinag, Sky News.
Well, we end News at 10 tonight with some breaking news in the last hour. And Euro 2022 winners, England, have beaten Brazil on penalties in the first women's Finalissima at a sold-out Wembley Stadium. Well, Sky Sports News' Joe Wilson joins us now. Joe, what an end to a big match. Tell us more.
Yeah, it was a really brilliant match. There was drama until the end, as you said. A sold-out Wembley. It was all set up for the Lionesses to win another trophy at Wembley, and they did exactly that. This one ending 1-1 in normal time to force penalties. It was Ella Toon here that opened the scoring in the first half. And in that first half, England really did look in control of the match. Brazil switched things up at half-time. They changed tactics. They really quieted England down. And look at that for an equaliser in the 3rd minute of stoppage time of the 90 minutes. What a time to score to force this game into penalties. Mary Earps, the England goalkeeper, making a little bit of a fumble there, but she made amends in the penalty shootout. What a save from Earps there. You can see exactly what it meant to her. And then it was Chloe Kelly that stepped up to score the winning penalty in some style to cue celebrations. Another trophy for the Lionesses. And of course, we are building up to this summer's World Cup. England now 30 matches unbeaten. They've got a game against Australia on Tuesday next week, which at the moment will be their final warm-up game before the World Cup. But what a way to go into the World Cup in July on that 30-match unbeaten streak.
What a match and what a way to end News at 10, Joe. Thank you.